Welcome to episode 49 of Rubbish Talk with myself, Alistair Meldrum.
And myself, Jane Bond.
And welcome also to all our new listeners. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome. So this week we have our guest is Tom Reid, who is Head of Infrastructure at East Lothian Council. So we have a fascinating chat with Tom about local authorities and all sorts, as well as Tom came up through the ranks in terms of social work and then waste management and then to the position as in now. So we had a really good chat with Tom. So, but before we go to that, Jane, there's been lots of waste management in the news again.
Well, there seems to be. We do like it when there's lots of waste management in the news. So the first thing is 10 years ago. Just doesn't seem that long since the charge for the single-use carrier bags was introduced in Scotland for the first time.
So how many single-use carrier bags have you bought since then, Jane?
Well, do you know, I haven't brought
I probably
very
hardly
many
bought.
at all.
I probably could count in two hands how many I bought.
Yeah, but do you know how many non-single-use carrier bags I've got?
And you know how many times you've got to reuse that non-single-use bag before it becomes more sustainable?
No, how many times?
I can't actually remember, but it's a lot of times.
Oh, is it?
Like
Well,
hundreds of times.
Well, they're absolutely brilliant though, because you can put all sorts of stuff in them.
Yeah.
You know, I carry my books around with them. I carry all my, I was going to say I carry all my my swimming stuff in, but I've not been swimming for ages. But anyway, then it reveals the number has fallen about 80%, the equivalent of 650 million fewer carrier bags.
There we go.
Impressive.
Good.
Yeah, I just feel really. If I go in without a bag, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm raking round in the back of my car trying to find something I can put it in.
Well, I was doing a guest lecture at University of West of Scotland this week, and it was on landfill sites. So I was going through this sort of technical design about landfills and so on. But one of the things I talked about was the fact that, you know, one of the big issues with landfills was wind-blown litter. So when it was windy, you tip the waste out. And in the past, before the tax came in for the bags, you tipped the waste out and these plastic bags would just take off, you know, if there was any sort of wind. And it was, from a landfill perspective, it was the best thing that ever happened because, you know, still you do get litter from a landfill site, but not nearly as bad as it used to be because of these, you know, these slim bags. So, yeah, there you go. Simple policy that drives behaviour change.
Yeah, and I do. I think I don't know why I would rather spend £1.10p or whatever on a proper fancy
Sturdy
carrier bag than 5p or 10p or whatever in these skinny little plastic ones. But anyway, I do.
Sometimes the flimsy ones are quite handy.
Yeah, you can use them as bin liners.
There you go. There you go. What else? So, UK government, they had the extended producer responsibility legislation went before Parliament on the 24th of October. So that is now in law. So if you want a really good explanation about extended producer responsibility, have a listen to James Piper's episode 47. He gave an excellent summary that's way better than either myself or Jane could manage.
He did actually. It was quite a extended producer responsibility for dummies, wasn't it? Really.
It was.
You know,
That's why we liked it, I think, Jane.
Yeah, I think so because it put it into simple terms. And yeah, so we're also back on our hobby horse on the single vapes one, and new legislation to ban the sale of single-use vapes from the 1st of June 2025. It's been in Parliament through the Circular Economy Minister, Mary Creer. So that's the UK government.
So that's for England only.
That's for England. And, you know, and the legislation is still in with the Scottish Government to say that is due to come into effect on the 1st of April 2025. And that legislation was published quite a while ago from the Scottish Government. So we're all, you know, everybody's aligning, thank goodness.
But you say that it's all aligning, but all these vape manufacturers going to do is tweak the product. So it's no longer single use, it's no longer disposal, and they're going to still supply the damn things. Do you not
Yeah.
think? If
Well,
they've
yeah.
not been complying with their responsibilities now, what's going to make them do that? They're just going to tweak. They're just going to move. Or am
Yeah.
I
I mean,
just
they
being
make
really
such.
cynical?
Well, I no, I think they make such a lot of money out of them, don't they? Because they're everywhere. These single-use vapes. So if you kind of ban the use of them, how are they going to, like you say, they must tweak them to do something. Yeah. No, I'd probably agree. It'd be interesting to see how they get what loophole they get through.
But interest, I don't know if you spotted in the budget that the vape liquid has now to be taxed from next year.
Oh, right. Does that mean the costs are going up then? Anyway.
Yeah, so something like I can't actually remember the figures, but if oh, for every 10 mil of liquid, it's going to be taxed a couple of quid.
Oh,
So
right.
they're obviously
Okay.
looking at taxing them the same. So this idea that a vape is a health product because it gets people off smoking, it doesn't look at it. It looks like the UK government's thinking, well, this lots of people have shifted from smoking to vaping. Let's just start taxing vaping so we can raise some revenue. Or am I just being a real
Absolutely.
cynic?
No, I think that's the right thing to do. Do you know, let's tax things that aren't really very healthy.
Oh, I know people that used to smoke went to vaping, and because they sit and just vape continually because the battery lasts forever, they've actually gone back to smoking because they're viewing smoking as healthier for them than sitting there vaping
Oh, no
24/7.
way.
So there you
Oh
go.
dear,
In
that's
fact,
shocking.
the person I'm thinking of has been on this podcast before as a guest, but I'll not name any
You'll
names.
not name any names.
I'm not name,
Okay.
he understands the extended producer's responsibility quite well. If anybody that gives anybody a clue, and it wasn't at James Piper.
It wasn't James Piper. Right, okay, I think we've got who you're talking about. You don't want to give a clue as to
No,
which
I'm
episode
not giving a
or
clue.
more than one,
I wouldn't
possibly.
divulge that information. He
Ah.
can, if he works out who he is, he can drop us a wee note.
Ah. So the other thing that came out within the last week as well is the stats, the data, the statistics for the amount of household waste generated in Scotland in 2023. And apparently it was 2.3 million tonnes, a drop of 1.1% from 2022, according to CPER, Scottish Environment Protection Agency. So yeah. It's also the lowest amount of household waste generated since the start of the current recording period in 2011. Do you think that's right? I mean, I don't know. It just seems like they're also saying that the Scottish recycling rate has reached its all-time high of 62.3% for Scottish household businesses and public services.
Yeah, it's across all sectors. So Scotland
Mm,
produces just over 10 million tonnes of waste a year. So the recycling rate across that is 62% or something. I've been doing a load of work. I think I mentioned before. I'm talking at the Resource Scotland conference on the 14th of November, and I'm doing loads of work on this. And I think one of my opening slides is going to be damn lies and statistics, because
that
if
sounds
you
interesting.
it depends how you look at it. So I think what the way the let's just say the way that the results are presented at the moment mean that we are missing opportunities for either environmental improvement or growth in economic activity.
Interesting. I
So,
mean, the thing is, you look at household waste, and we know that there's so much stuff still in there that's not being recycled, and you kind
absolutely.
of think,
I, w-
I'm not sure whether you can take into account that there can't be an increase,
I would
surely,
think
in
that
household waste.
1.1 decrease in tonnage is due to us largely getting better at recording the data and
Mhm.
not having double counting, rather than it being a genuine decrease in tonnage. Because
Yeah.
I don't know any local authority that's saying to me, we're actually collecting less waste out in the street. Every time we get price for waste comp, we used to base it on a 14 kilogram bin. Now we're basing it on 18 kilogram bins. You know,
Yeah.
so I'm not totally convinced it's declining. But the
Yeah, and I mean, and there has been increase in households, you know, house building and all that sort of stuff. So, are we saying that we've got that many more houses, but our waste is still decreasing?
but what you got to remember is only, I think from memory, it's that less than a third of Scotland's waste is actually household waste.
Yeah,
The
but even
bulk
then,
the
it's
bulk of the
yeah.
waste is construction and demolition waste, and
Mhm.
that's very cyclical in terms of what projects are going. So we were building the new Forth Road Bridge, for example, it maybe produce a lot of waste, or doing a lot of civil engineering work, we produce a lot of waste. So it goes up and down in terms of
Yeah.
what building
Uh-huh.
work. So it's quite hard to judge. So the good news for listeners of this podcast is I am doing that presentation at Resources Scotland conference. I have only been allocated a 10-minute slot.
Oh
I've
dear.
probably got about 2 hours worth of content. So what I am going to do is I am going to record a longer version of that presentation, explaining where the data is coming from, what it is, what it means, and we'll be releasing that on the Albion YouTube channel at the time of the event. So there you
So if
go.
you really want the
If you
nitty-gritty,
want the
Alistair's
nitty-gritty
there.
of the waste data. So
Yeah, because I think that's the thing as well. There's so much waste data bandied around. It's kind of trying to make sense of it all, isn't it?
yeah,
Where does it all come from?
it's trying to make sense of where it's all come from, and it's also trying to identify the really important waste streams. And the waste streams we maybe should be actually thinking a bit more strategically about, and thinking, either there's a risk with that waste stream in terms of our current, recycle method, or
Hmm.
there's huge opportunities with that waste stream to really drive the industry forward.
Yeah, and our big one is always going to be food waste, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So there you go. So that's
Yeah.
something
Good.
for everybody to look forward to.
Yes.
Once I actually write my presentation, since I managed to actually lose it, I managed to write it, and
Oh no.
my computer never saved it. So
Well, you know what they say about operators and,
operators'
operators'
incompetence.
instructions.
Well,
Yeah, that's right. Uh-huh.
it's one of these horrible things. I don't know what you think, but when you lose some of that, you always think the second version's never as. You always have rose-tinted spectacles about your first version.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And you're doing a live webinar as well, aren't we? Or you are
We are
for your rubbish talk as well.
yep. So there will be a Resources Scotland a live webinar. So we have students from, oh dear, where we've got Edinburgh Uni, University of West Scotland, Caledonian University. They are setting the questions, and they're going to do a live webinar, and we will be releasing that as soon as we possibly can after the event, but it will be probably the following week.
Excellent. So that'll you have to do a bit of revision for that, Alistair. If they're going to ask you
No,
all
no,
these
I don't know.
questions.
I've actually seen the questions. I think I can.
You think you can?
I think I
Oh,
can bluff
good
my way
stuff.
by.
Well done. And we're also looking for our guest introduction for the 50th episode. We've had a few people come forward. We have a deadline of 8th of November, so if you want to, get your go viral, let's get your your sample of what you can tell us, or introduction for our podcast.
And bear in mind, the 8th of November is one day after we release this podcast on the Thursday, the 7th. So you've not got much time. And we mentioned briefly last time there is a Strava club to try and encourage people to get out and about and do a bit of exercise. Jane,
I
not looking
know.
at,
Well,
not,
I've been saving up all my exercise to start
you
tomorrow.
can't do that. So a very simple challenge: 10 minutes for 10 days in November. The slight complication is we have discovered that Strava will only let you join the challenge if you actually pay the membership,
Oh
which
no.
I do pay the membership. That's why I never realised this until Mia was trying to
Ah.
get on the challenge. But you can your stuff's still tracked, because as long as you've joined the Rubbish Talk club, then your stuff is still tracked. And at the end of the day, it's just to try and encourage people to get out and about and do a bit more. So
Yeah, perhaps we could have some sort of challenge while we're out and about. How many vapes you can spot on the ground, or
Yeah,
I don't know.
we can add more challenges as we go on.
And also the shout out for our Rubbish Talk social media on LinkedIn and Facebook. So we want you to press that button and join us. And it's Rubbish Talk, not any other
Not not
equivalent.
not talking
Not
rubbish, not
no, not
talking
any
rubbish. We
other
don't
podcast.
want to
It's
promote that other
no,
podcast.
we're doing Rubbish Talk. So LinkedIn and Facebook. So get joined, and we can you can join in the conversations and give us some likes.
There we go. And I think
I think that's about it, isn't it?
I think that's us. I think that's us to pass over to Tom Reid. I really enjoyed the conversation with Tom.
I did as well.
He's got a huge responsibility in terms of his job, but he talks about it very openly and very honestly. So
He made me
uh,
tired just listening to him. I was like,
yeah,
okay, how can you manage all that in one week?
yeah. So no, and it was really interesting to listen to his journey through the council and his total career. So thank you very much to Tom for being so open and frank with us. So over to myself, Jane, and Tom.
Hi Tom, welcome to Rubbish Talk. How are you today?
Hi, Jane. Very well, thanks.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. We've got lots of questions for you, and want to hear all about your experiences in the waste industry. So the first one I'm going to ask you is, can you tell us who you currently work for and a bit of background about your organisation, please?
Sure. So I'm employed by East Lothian Council. I'm currently the head of infrastructure. East Lothian Council is obviously a local authority to the east of Edinburgh. We've got somewhere in the region of 54,000 properties, population of over 120,000 now, and we're one of the lowest funded authorities and one of the highest growth areas in Scotland. So my service portfolios cover roads, which is obviously all the road assets, street lighting, pavements, sustainable highways, active networks, and winter emergencies. I've got waste and transportation, so all of the logistics, all vehicles, as well as all the waste arrangements and home to school, VPMU and fleet compliance. I've got FM services, which is janitorial, cleaning, catering. I've got sport, leisure, countryside, so amenity cleaning, grounds maintenance, ranger service, outdoor pursuits and active schools. I've got engineering, so maintenance of all buildings and assets. And I've got strategic asset capital plan, so creation of all new buildings, all amendments, extensions, and asset management. So that's
My
kind of good
goodness,
summary.
A nice small
you're making me tired just listening to you, Tom.
a
Yeah,
nice small role there, Tom. They're not like
it's
you'll have a wee bit of
certainly
spare time.
It's certainly quite a portfolio compared to us as waste services manager, but it's diverse. There's never a dull moment, and it's yes. I mean, it's quite a big budget. It's a budget of about 33 million in terms of revenue, 150 million in capital, and I think last count there's somewhere around 1,600 staff.
Yeah.
But over all of that portfolio you've got, it's quite a challenge to work out where to spend your money
Well,
And your time. And your time.
and your time. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, obviously we like to spend the most on waste because it's obviously the most important. But
Obviously. No, I mean, I'm very fortunate. I've got 6 superb service managers that know their technical subjects inside out and lead very strong teams. We've got distinctive budgets around statutory and non-statutory provisions. So, yeah, they make my life a lot easier than it would be if I didn't have that.
How did just interest? How did East Lothian become a well-funded authority in comparison to others? Is that chance,
I said worst
geography,
funded. No,
or the
worst
worst
funded.
funded?
Yeah, I
I
think
thought you
we're
said the best funded.
No, I think we're second lowest funded in Scotland. So we've been 15 years in austerity now. If I go back to when I finished in waste as waste services manager, that was 2018. I think we had 44,000 homes. And then now I say we've got over 54,000 and the budget's not gone up at all. In fact, the obligations have gone up and the budget's gone down. So very, very difficult times for East Lothian at the moment, has been for a few years.
But
it's
surely if there's
definitely a
more
challenge.
homes, there's more council tax take, no?
There
Or
is
am I being too
no,
simplistic?
no. I mean, that's an interesting one because most people raise that if you've got more homes, you've got more council tax take. Therefore, you must be a better funded authority. But council tax makes up less than 25% of the funding required for services. It's the block revenue grant from the government that makes up 75%, and that's completely, that's gone backwards with obligations having increased. So, although council tax has gone up, it pales away in comparison to the overall money you need to run. The big ticket items really are education, social work, and health. They take up predominantly most of the budget.
I think that's the thing people don't understand. We've obviously just had the budget there recently, and we've got an aging demographic, more people ill, more people needing social care. And we've got to somehow deal with that.
Yeah.
Good luck with that role, Tom. I'll tell you. I think my hair would fall out with that amount of stuff under my service.
I think I've known you a long number of years, and I'm a lot greyer than I was when I first got to know you, Alistair.
Absolutely. So moving to the sort of the waste management sector, because I know you're still pretty passionate about the waste sector. How did you actually get into the waste game, or even how did you get into local authority?
So that's a good one. So my first degree was in design. So I was at Napier University at the time. Graduated in '91 when the big depression hit and mortgage rates were 14%, unemployment was high, and building industry was in its knees. So at that time, I was working for a lovely chap called Scott Brown down in Trinity, down at a bar, the Starbank Inn, and there was a chap came in who happened to run social work ambulances. And he said, "We're looking for people if you want a full-time job." So within 2 weeks, I was driving social work ambulances and picking up kids, old people, moving around the city in East and West. That opened up a connection with Listee schools. So one evening, within about 6 months of being in that, I picked up a group of kids from a Listee school in East Lothian St Joseph's and took them across to Mid Lothian to the Wellington to play a game of football. They happened to be short of players, so I played with them. And then they happened to say, "You seem to get on well with the kids. We've got some temporary jobs coming up in Listee School. Would you be interested?" So when I looked at the pay grade structure and the career opportunities, I accepted the opportunity to move across. And I didn't look back. I did about 7 years there to '97. So retrained, got my social work qualification and SVQ stuff. Thoroughly enjoyed that. And then the reorganisation came and there was a model shift in terms of childcare and the way these things operated. So I was a union rep at that point, a lead steward, so was helping, responsible for the closure of the school, the rundown of the Listee system and moving people. And I remember the HR officer, she came in and said, "There's an opportunity in waste. You've said you don't really want to stay in social work. Are you interested?" So my father, who was from South Ayrshire, he was a senior environmental health officer, phoned him and said, "What do you think about a job in waste?" And he said, "Jump at it. Growing industry, the environment's going to be massive. Don't be daft." So I said to HR I would go up and meet the head of service at the time, who was a chap called Ray Montgomery, fantastic manager, roads specialist, but a really good guy and really kind of motivated in frontline services. And if I'm being honest, that meeting changed my life because I walked in and as much as I was there to sell myself, he was selling frontline services, roads, waste, transport, you name it. So within, again, about 2 months, I'd moved across into waste services, and it was in McMurray Industrial Estate, very poor facilities. They had an old depot down at Meadowmill, and worked there. Part of the condition was that I went to Stoke College to do my HNC in waste management with Alistair from Dundee, and did that over 2 years. And again, got to 2000 when there was another reorganisation. And at that point, they were changing the structures, and I came out of it very well as effectively, fairly quickly, a principal officer in waste. And it was a chap, Colin Clark, became the service manager. So his interest was around the strategic theory and operational waste. Mine was very much in frontline management. So grasped the opportunity, got stuck into logistics in terms of the trucks, routing, introducing recycling and alternative collections, working up the recycling centres, the strategic waste fund applications. And to be honest, that was one of the most exciting parts of my life, because I absolutely loved working with the frontline team, all the refuse collection crews, litter amenity crews. It was great, really, really enjoyable. And it was also an exciting time because the Strategic Waste Fund at that point awarded sufficient money in East Lothian to enable us to develop what still is a state-of-the-art depot. So we've got Kinnegar that we built from scratch. Colin and I designed it from the ground up. It's great, yeah. I mean, it was well ahead of its time. So we've got, wash bays, fueling bays. We've got huge sheds for separation of waste materials. We've got proper covered parking amenity, proper offices, training suites, really good welfare facilities for the guys. We even built a gym on it for healthy working lives. And that formed a solid base. That, along with a state-of-the-art recycling centre at Kinnegar and one down at Dunbar, to give us a platform to move forward on. From there, we were able to start working with the teams in better quality refuse collection vehicles, waste vehicles, PPE. The team all came on board. We got all sorts of ideas and investment in succession planning, and then started into service redesign, looking at what fractions of waste could we change and how we collect it, what would we do with it when we got it. And we moved from there. So garden waste was obviously the first one that most authorities moved into. Then we started doing a little bit of paper collection, and then glass and cans. And then eventually we were kind of unique. I remember the Waste Managers Network going in, and they were all talking about mass capture and keeping the collection costs down. And that was the best way to recycle. And Colin and I had a really clear vision right from the start that quality capture was much more important than mass capture. So we opted for the box system, and we're still on that. Now, that's drawn over the years some serious challenges in terms of high winds and people concerned about, they would rather have the easy route of a mixed bin. But our contamination rates, right from, 2008, 9, whenever we moved forward with that, they've remained under 4%. They're so low. So we evolved that from twin streams, so glass cans, plastics, paper and card in a twin pack type system, right through to where we are now, which is the Roam Equip system. And Bruce Moffat's now the service manager for waste and transport. And he's done a phenomenal job taking the service to the next level with the team below him. We've got a really good succession planning with young officers. Ross, who's his deputy, he came through the ranks and is now highly qualified. Sarah does his strategic stuff, and we've got Glenn in the front line, the foreman, again coming up through the ranks and covering Stoke College training. So in terms of the people, in terms of the culture, in terms of the processes, I think we're doing a really, really solid job. And every year now, most of our materials is sold direct into the marketplace to get us a value back on it. I think the figures that have just come out, I think we're about 53, 54%. And that's obviously a year behind, because that doesn't include the most recent transition, which is to 3 weekly of domestic waste, residual, and obviously the weekly on the Roam Equip. But it's been a fantastic period in my life, so really exciting. I mean, not many people get the opportunity to develop their careers in training. But to be able to develop the infrastructure, the culture around the workforce, the logistics, handling, and to move a council forward environmentally has been a phenomenal opportunity. As I say, I've got to work with some phenomenal people, right from the guys at the front line who do all the hard graft, the really hard stuff that people don't see, and don't necessarily always appreciate. And they're the most important. If they don't turn up, the fabric of society changes within a couple of hours. Whereas if I don't turn up, it probably takes 4 weeks for somebody to realise that I've not paid a bill. But no, it's been a phenomenal opportunity.
Can I ask you a question? You're talking about Roam Equip. What's that?
So that's a current style of vehicle used. They're designed and developed in Ireland, and they're effectively a stillage vehicle, compartmentalised vehicle that enables you to collect material streams separately. So you've got cans and cartons, you've got glass, you've got paper and card, you've got food, there's a battery compartment if you want to do that, you can do textiles. So it enables source segregated, high quality capture at the curbside, meaning when you get it to the transfer station, it's really a case of bulking and shipping to market. There's no pre-treatment, there's very little contamination. And although
so it's a bin lorry with lots of compartments.
Yeah, effectively, it's simplistically put.
Yeah, but a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, Wales took the big jump. They all moved into that direction. And then East Ayrshire, I think it was, were slightly ahead of us in terms of being able to get the zero waste investment to change the fleet.
But East Ayrshire going back the way, aren't they? They're going back to bins now, aren't they? I believe.
I haven't spoken
No, I think
to
they are.
anyone outside,
I,
are
th- I
they?
think they
Right,
are. I think they're moving back the way,
right.
which always confuses the public no end.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a contentious part of my working life when I was in waste, and to an extent, overseeing it now still does. You know, there's in general people want the most simplistic single container collection that they can get. I have yet, in my length and breadth of travels in the UK, found a commingled collection that has not got fairly high levels of contamination.
But you only need to look at the MRF code of practice data, and it's sitting at about 18%.
Yeah, and
That's the contamination level. So
yeah,
a fifth of what's going in as recycling is not actually recycling,
yeah, yeah.
which is pretty poor.
I think so. In the modern world, we need to be doing better. I mean, I think there's the education part. So many people in society think it's the council's responsibility for waste. Now, it is. We're an integral partner, but we're the end partner. If you buy and you consume and you dispose of, the waste is yours. It's your responsibility. And what we do is, I think, we offer services that give the public the best opportunity to do the right thing environmentally and to take that responsibility. And I think it's a closed loop. I think it's a safe system. I don't think there can be any legal challenges that are going to come in and say you're not doing what you should be doing, and it's not. I mean, to argue that you're recycling, the whole point of recycling is that the end product goes back into the marketplace and either comes back as the same product or another. If you've got 18+% contamination, you're not getting that level of industrial turnaround. You're not getting proper climate change action, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm quite passionate about what we do.
So you're in boxes then.
Yes.
So so it's all in boxes. Is it picked up every week? Is that a
Yep.
weekly
So we
collection?
moved, we followed the household waste charter in terms of the literage of containers and bins. It's taken us a wee while to get there, but we're now on 3 weekly for residual, weekly for glass cans, plastics, cartons, batteries, food waste, and we offer a paid service for garden waste on a fortnightly basis, to which we've just rolled that out this year. And again, had a phenomenal acceptance and uptake. We're up to almost, I think it's about 24,500 houses, of which we used to I think we collected around about 26,000 houses when it was monthly and free. So that's been a really successful rollout for the authority.
Oh, that's quite good. So when you say all of those things that you collect, how many containers do you collect them in? What's the sort of...
So you put me in the spot now, Jane. You got to remember,
sorry,
I wear a,
I know.
I wear a suit now, and I walk the corridors of administration rather than reality.
He's busy trying to Google the.
No, not quite. I mean, we've got a food waste caddy, and we supply bags for the liners. So we're one of the few authorities that still do that. We've got a box for paper and card. We've got a box for cans and plastics, and glasses separate. So I think it's a 4-stream attack.
See, that's very similar, Tom, to like I'm South Ayrshire. We've got a huge number of bins. I think it's 6 in total. So we've got a glass bin, we've got paper and card, we've got plastic and metal. And I'll be totally honest, now it's split up like that. It's so clean.
Yeah.
You can walk down the back lane and lift the lids and look in it, and in the cardboard one, it'll be cardboard and paper.
Yeah.
And you can lift up the plastic and metal one, and it'll be plastic and metal sort of thing. And it's so easy to sort.
Yeah.
Compared with in the past, that used to all be in one bin, and it was just like next to impossible to sort.
I think the downsides, Alistair, if I'm being honest, is storing multiple containers. You need to be able to do that.
No doubt about
that. That's a concern.
Aye.
And then when you get serious winds, which we do in Scotland, that can cause problems. But by and large, it works far better than single containment. And the beauty we've got is our weekly curbside collection is done in partnership with FCC. So years ago, I took the decision to work as a private public model. We kept residual collections, trade collections, bulkies, CA sites, and garden in-house, but we outsourced the curbside recycling. And that's worked really well over the years in terms of the changes we've had to make. But these teams, they work really well. So they'll empty the containers, and where there is contamination or malpractice, they'll call that in immediately to the front office, and then the in-house, the council recycling advisors go out. And again, they do a phenomenal job because they're not really there for enforcement. They're more there to educate. So they'll knock on doors, they'll explain to the people what they're doing wrong. They'll give them additional containers, they'll give them advice, and they'll try and help them to fix it. And I think over the years in East Lothian, that approach to rolling things out, encouraging, supporting, and backing up has paid huge dividends. I think people that care and those in society that have an interest really get it and have appreciated it. So that's worked well for us.
It's really important. There's so many councils don't have that engagement bit anymore. They've just not got the resource to do the engagement, and that's why their contamination levels are up where they are.
Yeah, it's you get what you pay for, don't you, Alistair? I mean, we're still at a point. You and I have had this discussion, and I know you're engaged with Bruce now, but we still run the annual calendar that goes out to everybody, and it allows us to put information out on an annual basis on the back of the dates for collections. And that's worked really well. I would like to have both. I would like to move to the digital platform, similar to you've offered, so that most people who have got smartphones can get easy access and can report things and work with us. And that'll be the next generation of development. But there's still a significant proportion of the population that are elderly and aren't necessarily IT savvy.
Aye.
And I think that ability to give everybody the same amount of information also pays dividends.
There you go. Good. There we go. That was an in-depth look at waste management in East Lothian, eh? And it's good to hear, because you're one of the few authorities, as you say, that's doing it that way, and you've highlighted what you view are the real benefits of it. So
Yeah.
thank you. You've sort of touched on this, but our normal next question is to ask you about a favourite role or project. But you've mentioned that was a favourite time of yours. But any specific projects that stand out that you think, oh, I would love to be doing that one again? Or
I think from my perspective, I absolutely loved the development of Kinnegar. To be able to, at that time, I think the build value, I think it was about 7 or 8 million was the value, which would be nothing nowadays. You'd be
yeah,
treble that. But to actually design something, so to sit in a pub with your boss on a Friday night over a pint and start sketching out what you would have, and designing up something. Colin had some great ideas, and we worked together on that to get to a point where we had this back of the fag packet idea of how we could drive the county into a different direction. And we took it to, it was Ray, who had mentioned earlier, and a chap called Pete Collins, he was a director at that point and a real supporter of waste. To take it to them and to get the level of buy-in and enthusiasm to deliver that was tremendous. And the stars aligned because we got the zero waste funding through strategic money. We were able to get the councillors to see the vision that we had. And, everybody invested in that vision. So to design it, to be the client contractor on the build, to see it evolve, to have all the frontline staff see it evolve and to have their input. And then I'll never forget that the first day there was a chap called Jimmy Luby, who's sadly no longer with us. He was in the union. And Jimmy kept saying to me, you'll never land it, you'll not get the money. And that was the general thought, it was such a big ask. And then I remember saying to him, we've landed it, it's coming. And he was like, really? I said, and you'll be one of the first. And I remember taking him in when we just had the steel portal up and we had the concrete floors poured. And he's walking around going, I said, this could be amazing. And I said, I said, wait till you see the schematics. I said, it's going to be special. And then that first day when we all walked in, we opened the doors and we brought all the staff in, and they saw that they had a huge canteen, really good quality seating, proper heating systems. They had a drying room with washing machines and dryers for the PPE, proper shower rooms and lockers. They had a training room with IT connections if they wanted to do development work. I mean, it was life-changing because we'd come from, there's a good story in this actually. We had temporary cabins in a place called McMurray Industrial Estate. And it was like, I maybe shouldn't reference this, but the Irish H block back in that period, that's what it looked like. and it was awful. The power up to McMurray would come and go, the showers would sporadically spark, the lights would dim and come up, the computers would reboot. But they never moaned. There was probably at that point a workforce of around about 70, and they got on with it. They absolutely made the most of it. And then one night there was Ray was actually in the winter duty room for roads, which was across from it. And apparently the story goes, because I was in my bed at the time, but the story goes, he looked at his compadre in roads and said, "Oh, I think it's snowing." And he said, "Forecast said not." He said, "We've not deployed the gritters yet." He said, "No, look, there's big flakes of snow." And then somebody started shouting, "It's no snow, it's ash. The waste depot's on fire."
No.
And there'd been an electrical fault in one of the heaters, and the units went up. I mean, we lost 90% of the H blocks, including all of the PPE and the main set of keys for the vehicles. And that was, we got called at sort of 2 a.m. to say, "You need to come up, fire brigade are on it, major problem." See, by 8 o'clock, normally our deployment was 7 a.m. By 8, 8:30 the next day, all of our trucks rolled out to do their collections as planned, and nobody would have known anything had happened, because we were able to call all the guys at home and say, "Look, lost the depot, so interim arrangements, we've got second set of keys off site, business continuity is invoked, here's what we want you to do." And they were phenomenal. We stood up and did it. But that equally then helped spur that decision about getting a new depot.
I had to move.
So I'm sure there's been loads of allegations about Tommy set fire to his depot to get a brand new facility. I'd like to go on record and say officially that's not the case, and that it was all pre-planned in terms of the new depot.
Brilliant. I remember you showing me around the depot, Tom, and I can't remember how long it was after you'd finished it, but it was just at the time, I've been running lots of council depots which are generally substandard, generally not that clean and tidy, not that good environment, etc., etc. And yours was just like way above what was out there. And particularly, I remember you vividly taking me around the training room and explaining the access. It's not just for training them in the job; it's also letting them do they're studying to get their higher English qualification or whatever it might be that they want to move on, and the access they had to e-learning and all that sort of stuff was just it was brilliant. And that was probably about 10 years ago you showed me that.
That was 2010 when you first came round there. So yeah, you're talking about 14 years ago, and at that point we also had a 20 kilowatt array on the roof, so we were almost electricity neutral. We had our own wastewater treatment system that discharged, so we didn't have any kind of major sewer costs. And the rainwater was harvested from the roofs, so we had UV light, and that's what was used to wash the vehicles. So even in those days, it was quite ahead of its time.
You're singing all dancing, Tom. Can I come and have a visit round?
Yeah, no, I'm sure Bruce would be more than happy to accommodate, take you on a tour.
It's worth a look.
Yeah, it sounds great. So in terms of, that was the best thing, what about the worst thing? Have you had any disasters?
Setting the depot on fire.
Well, apart from setting the depot on fire. No, I just think he wanted somewhere to dry his PPE. So.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that free heat.
Is there anything, any funny stories actually, apart from setting the depot on fire? Is there anything else?
There's some of the humour on the frontline services is phenomenal. I remember getting a complaint from a lady in North Berwick who was very well spoken. And she came on and she was angry. She was absolutely livid, screaming that we'd left a pair of Y fronts outside her house and that there were definitely waste services. And I was trying to think about my PPE issue and thinking, we do high vis, we do gloves, we do over trousers and boots. I don't ever remember buying the guys' Y fronts. So anyway, she was adamant. So I said, look, I'll come down and I'll have a chat with you to calm me down, because she was threatening the papers and stuff. So I went down, and sure enough, here's a pair of Y fronts sitting outside our house on the pavement. So I got a pair of tongs, picked them up, put them in a black bag and apologised and said I would take it away. So I got back to the depot, got the crew from the North Berwick area, and there was one chap was walking a bit funny, and I said, need to chat to you boys. I said, there's been an allegation that you left a pair of pants. Well, they all started laughing, and if I remember it right, one was a Hearts fan, one was a Hibs fan, and one had won the derby and one had lost. And the one that had won the derby kept winding the other one up so much that he went to jump out the truck at this point, and the guy grabbed him and gave him a wedgie, but ripped the pants clean out from under him. and they were left on the side of the pavement. So,
Ow.
so I mean, you're going back a long number of years. You wouldn't get away with that kind of nonsense now. But I remember killing myself laughing, thinking, the woman was right. So I had to write a really nice letter of apology. So yeah, you did. You got kind of incidents that you would class as funny. I mean, in terms of hard times, there's been a lot of hard times in work. I think the service changes. When you do it. I was involved in the first one where we went from weekly to fortnightly, and the introduction of changes to the recycling services. And I remember, I think, really, it was a one council approach. So everybody was involved, the comms teams, the customer care. We had a solid approach to it. But as always happens in these things, there was a couple of things went wrong around probably about 24 hours from delivery. So we had a mass delivery of containers going out through a logistics firm working with our own teams. And we'd fallen behind on that. We'd fallen behind on trade sacks for recycling capture. We were doing survival bags at that point because it was the cheapest way to meet the legislation and offer commercial customers. And I can remember my sleeping bag in kindergarten staying there for about 36 hours without really much sleep or a break, and the whole pressure of that coming together. And that's never left me. That was a tough time. But then you get through it and it works, and you learn from it. And I know Bruce has him and the team have had a hard time this year. They've been brought in 3 weekly and charging for garden and booking the household waste recycling all in the space of a few months, and that's been really difficult. So you get logistic challenges like that you're not necessarily got the capacity and resources to do, but you get through it, and your industry. I think the waste industry is a phenomenal industry. You talk about good times. I go back as well to the good old days of Torquay, and we would all converge on the greens.
I don't think we've actually had anybody really talk about Torquay in this, Tom. So you
Really?
maybe better explain Torquay and
Oh,
the benefits of Torquay to people.
so Torquay was your national waste management show, and everybody that was involved in waste, from local authorities to private sector, would appear. Or
And it take you about 12 hours to drive from Scotland to get there.
Well, it would. We sometimes caught a flight. You used to get some cheap flights either to Bristol or Exeter and
Bristol.
pick up a hire car. But you would effectively have 3 miles of greens, 3 separate greens, and they would have every kind of piece of equipment, new technology, IT systems, consultants, refuse collection vehicles, recycling collections, seminars. And the networking was phenomenal. I mean, I can't remember how often I went down, maybe 6, 7 years before it started to come to an end. But for the cost of us to go down and spend 4 days there, we always came back with more value for the authority than we spent. And I can easily quantify that in terms of things that you would retrofit to vehicles that would be given to you to test and report on, demo vehicles and equipment that you could try that there was no rental charges to do, new initiatives, networking with people that had tried alternative collection models or different comms, customer care. There was always huge value could be brought back from that. So they were great times, and at night time it was great. You'd have a few beers with all the different kind of companies that you worked with, and integrated with. So yeah, there was a lot of fun times down there. But that was a long time ago. That was way back, when I was a boy and didn't have grey hair. That kind of hospitality and kind of networking opportunities just doesn't really exist anymore.
It's a shame, I think, in a way that it doesn't. It's a real challenge for the sector. You only need to look at we've talked about the Resource in Scotland conference coming up on 14th of November, and companies are sponsoring that event to give free places to allow local authority staff to attend, which is a pretty shocking state about the state of the waste sector in Scotland. If the people that are handling pretty big chunks of waste can't come to Edinburgh for a one-day conference.
I think
You know,
it's symbolic.
it's a symptom of local government funding and all that sort of stuff, but it's a pretty poor place to be.
It is, Alistair. I mean, it's. I think it's endemic of the lack of funding that's now in local authority.
Right.
Every pound really counts. People. I'm terrible for reading social media, and you shouldn't, because it's an appalling thing to take any picture from. But I do it probably sort of. It's a bad hobby, shall we say? But the type of nonsense that you read on that, it's all that kind of silly stuff about it's a jolly, it's a freebie. I haven't got many staff that will work their contracted hours. I've got managers that run 35-hour weeks that'll be pulling 50 to 60-hour weeks. I've got frontline staff that go above and beyond. Those days, where you had a plethora and abundance or an over provision are gone.
You don't have
You
you don't have
don't.
any more.
So, when you're looking at, a £15 set of overalls compared to an £18 set, you've got to have a really good justifiable reason to get the £18 set. And that shows my age because you're probably up about £100 now, but both points reasonable wear.
Exactly.
But it is that, every pound's a prisoner. And the other thing that's really interesting for me is COVID changed a lot for us all, in so many bad ways. Home working and digital connectivity has absolutely dramatically added to the pressure. Now, it's a phenomenal way. We're having a great conversation. You're in South Ayrshire, I'm up in Edinburgh, talking about East Lothian, and you can get people from all over the world. You don't have to travel now for a meeting and lose a whole day. Huge benefits. But the volume and the expectations on the workload and the tasks that you've got to complete is through the roof. And I think that also means that if you go and give yourself over for a full day at a conference, you're coming back to 700 to 1,000 emails, whatever it might be, a whole host of problems that you've then got to fix, and you're chasing your tail. And there's
Aye.
something going wrong with society and our work-life balance. And it's not just about not being able to go and network to learn and develop and get the best for your authority or your private business. It's about getting that work-life balance whereby we can do things that bring benefit at a pace and scale that you can cope with. And that's probably me on my head of service high horse now, but
No,
I do have concerns about that.
totally agree. I totally agree with that, Tom. I think there's definitely an expectation that you can sit and have half a dozen meetings, and I see myself having half a dozen meetings in a day, and I never process any of them because I've got no gap between them.
Yeah.
And I get to the end of the day, and what was said at that meeting first thing in the morning, and I've forgotten already. And it's not. I don't think it's that productive in a lot of ways. It's you're almost better in the old days. You would go to a site, you would see somebody, you would drive half an hour, you would have a bit of time to think about it,
Process it.
and you'd move on to the next meeting.
Yeah, I think
So,
thinking time and time to consider is a luxury now. I find that more in my new role. I've been this, well, it's 2018, so coming up 6, 7 years. With the variety of services that you harness and lead and direct, you're going from subject matter to subject matter, and it's high
aye,
pace. It's there's problems coming at you every day, big projects, whether it be asset rationalisation, commerciality, energy generation, all of that good stuff comes forward. And you don't get the time to take stock. You're going from one thing to the next, and it can be difficult. And that's where you're relying on really good quality people around you, that make a difference, can advise you, and also bring you back when you make a bad choice.
remind you,
Absolutely.
remind, remind me. It was you that
Question
said
you whether
that,
it's a
Tom.
really good idea or not.
But coming back to the waste management bit, do you feel, just because of your role with waste and so on, do you feel you have to champion the cause when you're out socially and with family and friends? Are you the bin police, or are you able to calm that bit down a little bit?
I think my 3 kids would tell me I am the Nazi police when it comes to waste management. The 2 elder ones, they've left home now. They've got their own independent places, but the youngest, she's 15 this weekend. And yeah, I mean, she'll lecture me black as white on the planet, and then the can of Coke will go into the bin and I'll have to fish it out and give her a lecture. And again, it's just concentration. But no, I'm still passionate about it. It still means a lot. And what I do find myself championing as well in my new role is championing, waste in the waste industry amongst, senior management and elected members and politicians, and continually sort of flying the flag of what's important at front line.
And how do we get the public to engage a bit more with it? How do we, part of the idea of this podcast is to try and share the complexity of the sector. How do we get them to actually care? Because a lot of them, in my view, don't really care about waste management. They put it in the bin fairy comes along and takes away, and they don't actually really care about it.
I'm a big fan of positive engagement before you take the big stick. And I don't think we've got the big stick. So I think, it's a bit of a redesign through the Waste Manager Network, Scottish Government, and looking at, the entire process from start to stop. So I think we need to get stronger national messaging out there, not 32 authorities, but, a single government message, even if the authorities all pay into that, that talks in really black and white aligns waste with environment and climate damage. I think this planet is in a terrible state. We read so much about it. Howard Dryden, Howard Dryden, Aqua and the glass reprocessor, huge respect for Howard. Yeah,
Yep.
and his work, he talks about the contamination in the oceans, the inability to deal with the carbon and regenerate the oxygen. He talks about the Amazonian rainforest. People get that, but they don't. I don't think that they correlate the contamination from waste and the damage that can do to the environment to the overall sickness of the planet. So I think we've got a better job to educate that, and I think kids were doing a fairly good job in schools bringing that through. But we need to accelerate that. We need to show hard-hitting messages. I think we've had a fairly good experience in East Lothian of aligning people's waste as their responsibility. We've made it very clear to people, and will continue to do so, that somebody's waste, your waste, might be our profit margin. So if you throw away a piece of cardboard and I can bale it clean, I might be getting £30-40 a tonne. Similar with glass cans, plastics. We talk about the food waste. So you educate people that waste material actually is a raw material. It's a product that can be recycled and can generate income and can come back. That's important. I think getting that message that when you go out and you buy things as a consumer, you've then got the responsibility of that disposal. So I don't think many of us are great in this country at really thinking things through. Do I really need it? We all jump on Amazon, we do the easy convenience, and we say, I'll just buy that. That might come in handy, or I'll just get that. That'll make life easier. Won't it be nice to have the latest iPhone? And as I get older, I'm certainly realising, that the latest doesn't necessarily mean it's worth the value, because the small upgrade you're getting is not really that valuable. So from production through to consumerism, I think we're not getting that right. There needs to be further education on that. I think we need to make systems of waste collection and treatment much, as simple as possible, to make it as easy for people to do as we can in the right way. Now, that still means they're going to have to make an effort and be responsible for their own material and containers, but, give them the services. I was a fan in part of the deposit return concept. I think there's a real place for it for single-use stuff on the high street, carry-out shops and places like that. I wasn't a fan of the deposit return concept in terms of supermarkets and mass capture, because local authorities are already resourced to pick up most of that. And I don't think we got that fully correct. But I do think we need to get back onto the deposit return and get it up and running for a fair proportion of what it was going to cover, which would be single-use. And then I think education is important, whereby you have that ability to actually go and engage people who are struggling or who are resistors, talk to them constructively, give them advice. And then I come to the big stick. I think there has to be penalties, there has to be consequences for people in society who deliberately go against easy systems, support, and doing things in the right way. Because they're undermining everybody's efforts. If you're a really conscientious recycler and you use, let's say it's a single capture, and you do it right, but your guy next door to you chucks the nappies and the food waste in amongst his recycling, the entire load's spoiled. So I think we need to have some form whereby we can eventually punish those and take them to task to get them for behavioural change when it's not right. But it's a holistic system approach in total, really.
No, totally agree with that. And it's often one you get from the commercial waste world. It's not their waste; it's society's waste. They're just dealing with it as best they can. So if it's presented very poorly, they'll only be able to deal with it very poorly. If it's presented well, then they'll be able to recover value from it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I often feel that government seems to forget that bit. They expect that, whether it's local authority or private companies, can resolve these issues. And we can't really without the public being inside.
No, I mean, it's a partnership. Whether it's a partnership through legislation that you have to be participating, or whether it's, I mean, for me, waste society, if you're in society, you generate waste, and that's where we
Yeah,
need to have that partnership. We need to carry the people with us, and people need to work with us. We can't do it without our communities, and our communities can't do it without us.
yeah,
Mm.
perfect. Right, a less serious question for you, Tom.
Okay.
How do you get away and relax from the work? Or
Oh,
do
you're
The
you?
too
million
busy
dollar
working.
question.
Yeah, no, 60,
The boss
70
isn't
hours.
listening, Tom. You can give us the truth here.
Absolutely. I'm probably, I mean, we've touched on that. I'm probably the worst example at the moment of that. I don't think the work-life balance is particularly brilliant.
It's quite correct.
Yeah, I think that needs
Mm.
to change a little bit, but I very much family orientated. We get my son's up in Aberdeen, a daughter that lives fairly close by. We get together quite regularly with them and their partners, and we have a lot of family do's. That's kept going from COVID. A lot of kind of family meals. Got a couple of dogs, like to walk a lot, and golf's still one of my things. I don't get anything like as many games as I would like a year.
Well,
But
we've got two questions there. What type of dogs and what's your handicap?
so the handicap's the dogs. No, well, my handicap's lapsed, so I was probably a bandit and a really strong 15 when I played. I'm now probably a really poor 15 and should be a 20. But I mean, I only get maybe 8 to 10 games with friends a year, so that'll be the retirement plan.
Yeah,
Get membered up. Dogs, I've got 2 Jack Russells at my feet at the moment. I've got a
right.
3-year-old, and we've got a wee 11-month-old pup that we rescued.
There you
So yeah,
go.
they keep us on our toes.
So the hot news that I've not revealed in this podcast yet is we may have an Albion dog soon.
Oh, fantastic!
It's to replace Charlie, who was the Albion dog from about 3 years ago. So
Right, you
yeah, that
a
may
rescue or a pup?
no, a pup, a
Pup,
pup.
fantastic.
So getting picked up this Saturday. So
Very nice.
exciting stuff.
You'll
Excellent.
have to be bringing it in to
Yeah,
pad
I don't
around
think
and
it's
get
allowed
used
in
to
for a
it.
wee while. Actually, I think we need to wait. I maybe announced that prematurely. We maybe need to cut this bit out.
I find they're really good. They'll lie at my feet most of the day when I'm working from home until I get into a really important meeting that I'm chairing, and then you'll
And
get
then they'll start barking.
there'll be a postman or a DPD delivery, and that'll be it. They'll go mad.
Well, we had one. I can't remember if I've said this in this podcast before, but there was a certain delivery man that came to the office that Charlie absolutely detested. Like, just
Really,
it would not
didn't.
even let this guy in the door. And strangely enough, none of the staff liked this guy either. And we actually had to change the delivery company. We actually started having to use a different delivery company. So it was
It's
just,
incredible.
you'd be on the phone or something and this would happen and it'd be
Go
like,
mad.
chaos. So there you go. Good.
Yeah.
Sorry, before Jane skips in, and your family from Girvan originally, so you're a South Ayrshire boy
I'm a South
originally.
Ayrshire boy. Yeah, I was born and brought up in Girvan. Left
There
at
you go.
17 to go to Napier. But
Yeah,
yeah, that was the hometown.
very good. So
So you've moved over to the east then.
I guess from
Yeah.
the home patch. There we go.
Yeah, I was just going to add in about the dogs. I haven't got a dog, but I have loans of dogs. When the people in my street go away on holiday, I look after their dogs, which is quite nice because then I can give them back.
Oh, perfect. I'll
But
keep you in mind
they're
then. I'll get
lovely.
your address because we're regularly struggling to have doggy daycare.
Yeah, yeah, I quite enjoy it actually. Right, back to your current role. You've kind of gone backwards and forwards, but what are you trying to achieve in that? What's next for you? Apart from retirement from what you were saying then, to play golf.
Yeah, I got a
But
few years to go from that.
yeah,
But
well, yeah.
I suppose my main focus at the moment, Jane, in all honesty, is ensuring that we deliver the best frontline services and service delivery on assets and buildings in the face of the current fiscal challenges. It's becoming really, really difficult. We had full council this week. I don't know if you maybe saw, but I was on the BBC because one of the buildings we've got, which is a really iconic building in Musselburgh, the Brunton Hall. So it was a civic centre, it was an arts centre, the Brunton Trust were there, and it was bequeathed to the town, built through Common Good and a chap called Brunton Hood, Brunton's Wire Mill. So really, really important asset for the community, but it was completely covered in RAAC, the rack roof panels, the aerated concrete that is
All
dangerous.
right.
So we've spent probably 14 months analysing it, studying it, coming up with options appraisals to see if there's anything we could do to save it. And we can. It's just untenable. So that had to go to council this week, and they took a decision that it's going to have to be mothballed for the health and safety grounds and probably demolished. So that propels you into that, difficult thing of taking away what is something important in the heart of the community, and that ownership of wanting to find a way to replace what's been taken away, but in very, very difficult financial challenges. So that's, in a molecular level, granular level, that's a really sort of strong challenge I've got over the next few years. On the wider side, I'm leading the asset review, so we've got over £650 million worth of buildings, and probably a backlog maintenance of about 45 to 50 million. And a lot of the buildings don't have the right level of utilisation. We don't need as many buildings, so we're about to engage right across the 6 main clusters in East Lothian to find out what people really want, what they need, and to try and rationalise and reduce the number of buildings we've got, and those that we can declare surplus and that the councillors will support. What can we do with them in a constructive way? Can they go out as a community asset transfer, and would the community have use for them? Third sector, can we sell them for development, for flats or housing, or can you develop them in a commercial way that there would be job creation? So I've got that on the go. I've got some really interesting energy projects on the go. We're looking at potential of a solar farm over an old landfill site that would provide a direct wire. We're looking at some wind generation and solar to power some of our council buildings and assets, and potentially district heating. We've got a commercial project going on to try and drive income. And then behind all of that, we've got, the daily challenges of roads. I'm probably 50% of the funding I need to maintain all the assets. So what can we do that's creative that will get as long a life out of the assets we've got before they deteriorate? COVID was an interesting period because when it opened up with open space, our coastline got absolutely hammered in terms of people knowing where it was and utilisation, and that hasn't changed. So I think we've got the most triple SI and important coastline in Scotland per mile, and we've got the highest level of visitors to the small amount of coastline. There's a sort of 20 odd mile stretch, and we get thousands and thousands of visitors. So the amenity and ranger team, we've got a phenomenal ranger squad. They do a great job in biodiversity and management of these areas. So how do we protect them? How do we let people get access for mental health and welfare, but how do we maintain them, enhance them, and protect? So yeah, there's so many challenges, that I want to. I guess on a Friday night when I open that bottle of red wine and get in the kitchen and make a curry because I love cooking, I still take a huge level of satisfaction that I took when I was waste manager. And that was, you would go home on a Friday night and you go, do you know what? We hit every single house in the county. They all got the collections they needed, and the ones that we made a mistake on, or there was an error or a miscollection, we fixed it, and we fixed people's problems. And I still take a huge pride from that, when you get an emergency situation like flooding, or you get, a storm like Arwen, or the snows come, or even just from general daily service provision, you go home on a Friday night and you know that, everything's been done that could be done, and what you've actually done for the communities. And one of the things in local government that I don't think we're great at is selling just how good we are at what we cover.
Mm.
You get a lot of criticism now. Some of it's genuine and some of it's deserved. We don't always get everything right. But I think in general, people don't understand what we provide to keep the fabric of society moving. And I think, if we were able to do that in a slightly more eloquent and obvious way, people would be gobsmacked at what we deliver. And I don't mean we just in East Lothian, but all local authorities.
Well, I'm absolutely quite gobsmacked at what you deliver, actually, because, there's so many things that you said there, and I'm thinking, oh, yeah, of course. And, thinking about the assets and all the buildings, and then, and trying to maintain and manage those, and making sure that they're fit for purpose.
Yeah.
And, and all that sort of stuff. You think, wow, yeah, hadn't really appreciated or thought about. You just take things for granted.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. A good example. I mean, this morning we built a brand new high school community campus. That was commissioned about 18 months, 2 years ago, Rosehill High School. It's a phenomenal facility. So it's got community partnership spaces, it's got your secondary education, it's got sport, leisure. So it's a huge offering for an existing community that's expanding and growing with new properties. And one of the conditions around that was energy management and targets. So it has to perform to certain thermal and energy performance targets, or you don't get the grant back on the kit from the government to help with the capital repayment costs. So we've been working really hard on that. And that's been really complex because of the scale of the build and the challenge. And you go from that to for example, FM, and you get an absolutely phenomenal set of pictures pops up from your FM manager showing one of the schools where the catering team have gone to the absolute ends to make Halloween special. And the entire menu, the server area, all the food's been carved in pumpkin colours, and it's tremendous. It's absolutely phenomenal. But the effort that team have gone to deliver that, and you're covering that level of scale of frontline delivery that's really important to kids and young people. And then you're going right up to major strategic problems that, have a multi-million, seven-figure kind of challenge for the authority. So you get to touch everything in this role, and it's really diverse, but it's good. The weeks pass very quickly, I'll say that.
I can imagine. The other, and I think you've kind of covered quite a lot of these actually, is a fact you want to share from your job or sector which you think people may not know. And, I think all those things that you've just covered then about how you deal with it, that's probably covers that. But is there anything else you want to share with folk about your sector or the job?
I think the biggest thing that I would share is that the vast majority of people in local authority actually care. They want to do a good job. They want to deliver for their communities and their people, and most of them live in the communities they serve. And I think one thing, if anybody's watching or listening to this, not watching, but listening to this, try and understand that that's the background that people start from, because social media, and in particular politics at national level, I think has tarnished the way people view local authority. Some of the vitriol that services and teams and staff receive, and vast majority of it is absolutely, it's made up, it's not fact, it's fictitious. It's quite damaging. So, I think the thing I would share is try and understand what people are trying to deliver for you, and try and appreciate it. And yeah, if things go wrong, challenge, but try and not be, as negative as you can be, and certainly don't spread lies and misinformation, because that helps no one in communities. And I'm a real believer in community, whether it's people coming together, sharing experiences, working, play, that's what's important. Communities make people's lives, and councils and local authorities are a huge part of that, whether it's waste to keep them safe, whether it's public transport to move them around, whether it's social work to help them in their problems, or whether it's education to teach them. We touch every part of it. So just have a little bit more consideration and understanding.
Comment?
I think that sounds good. Moving on to the last few questions. Your favourite piece of slang or dialect? You must have some from your crew days.
Probably comes back to my West Coast days as much as my my waste management. I do love the word shunky when you're talking about toilets and sewage. I think shunky is a great word.
Shunky. I've not
Jane,
heard
that
of
be a
that
total
word.
new one to Jane.
That's another new one for me. I keep learning all sorts of stuff. Write that one down as well.
Yeah,
Shunky.
no, I think that's probably one of my favourites.
Is that West Coast, Tom?
I don't know where it came from, but it's certainly one that I've always taken to.
I think we're going to get Mia to write down a glossary of terms here from everybody's slang.
Favourite bit of slang. So finally for me, Tom, I'm going to give you a magic wand. What would you like to use it for? In terms of I'm going to restrict you to the waste world.
That's fair enough. Now that is an interesting question.
I think actually some of your previous answer was some of the stuff I would like to see anyway.
Particularly, I think anything that you do, for me and the services, waste in particular, but all others, I always say to teams, we've got the skills and ability and capacity to deliver anything that people want if we've got the money. So it's probably the most obvious answer in the world, and it's probably a get out of jail card, but I would say, proper funding for local authorities to do what we need, delivering waste, to have the right kit, to get the right messaging out, to have the right amount of education enforcement, to do everything we need to do properly would be money. But that's probably an obvious one.
Well, I don't
No,
actually think anybody's actually said money.
nobody said the obvious one.
Really? Oh, well,
So
maybe not
no.
that obvious. Maybe others are too well funded then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
possibly. And finally, what advice would you give to the younger generation coming into the sector, looking at you and thinking, "I want to be there"? What would you tell them to do?
So 100% go for it. Believe in yourself. Don't be afraid of the term waste industry. It's a phenomenal industry. There is so much opportunity in it, whether it's physical hard work, whether it's the science behind it, whether it's the logistics behind it, whether it's the education and enforcement, whether it's the management. There are so many opportunities in waste, and waste being aligned to the environment and the way societies function. Embrace it, jump at it, try and get into it. It's a great industry. I don't know very many people at all that have come into it that haven't enjoyed it or haven't had opportunities. And as I said to my own kids, I would say the same. We've had apprentices and with young people coming through. Jump and grab every opportunity. When you get a chance to deliver a job, do it to the best of your ability. When you get a chance to train, take your training opportunity, ask questions. And, I've been very, very fortunate. I'm incredibly loyal to East Lothian. I came in, you heard my story, worked in a bar, got a chance to drive social work ambulances, got a chance to work in a listee school, got a chance to move into waste. I've got, a few degrees, I've got a master's, I've got management qualifications, COTCs for landfill, you name it. All of that has been given to me because I worked hard, but been given to me because the authority looks after you and invests in you. And I think that's something that young people can learn. Nobody gives you things unless you work for it. But if you work for it, the opportunities are there and you can get out of life what you want in the main.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think that's
That's,
good advice.
that sounds like very good advice, Tom.
Hmm.
So that's us exhausted our questions plus a few side ones that we threw at you. So
Yeah,
thank you
thank
from
you.
me. Thank you very much for giving us your time.
No, thank
Yeah,
you very
thanks.
much for asking me. It was appreciated.